Hello, my name is Sindhu Sarkar, and I'll be presenting our demo for Driver Project 2 for Group 22. So here we have our LED and our 3 push buttons. Push button 1 is connected to port A, RA2, push button 2 is connected to port B, RB4, and push button 3 is connected to port A, RA4. So if I push button 1, it should toggle the LED on and off for an interval of 0.25 seconds. And if I push button 2, it should toggle the LED on and off for an interval of 2 seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. And if I push button 3, it should toggle the LED on and off for 4-second intervals. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi. And now if I push both push button 1 and push button 2 together, it should toggle the LED on and off for 1 millisecond intervals. And now moving on to the code, we first initialize our clock frequency to 500 kilohertz, and then we use the clock div bits to divide our initial clock frequency by 256 to get our new initial clock frequency of 1.95 kilohertz. And then for our time delay function, we start with calling our new clock function with 500, which then is converted into the 1.95 kilohertz as our initial clock frequency. And then we configure our timer 2 and make sure that we set the prescaler to 1 to ensure that the timer is counting up by 1 each time. And then the timer 2 register is also reset to 0. And the PR2, which is our period value register, is going to hold our argument number of executions based on the time interval for blinking the LED on and off. And then we also configure our timer interrupt here for timer 2. And what happens here basically is, first the value here, the argument value, will go in PR2, and the timer, once the delay is called, the timer will count up by 1 each time based on this prescaler until it matches the PR2 value here, which will be the number of executions for each time interval for blinking of the LED. And once this matches this one, then we'll have the interrupt execute, and it'll push out of this function and return to the caller and do whatever is in the caller and then come back again based on the user input. And this idle here is basically used to ensure that we only exit this function whenever the interrupt is executed. So it ensures that it waits until the interrupt is executed before leaving this function. And here we initialized our LED and our push buttons. First we changed the notification, pushed up, enabled all the push buttons to ensure that they take the input route for the GPIOs. And for the LED, we ensured to configure it to output for the GPIO. And for the LED, we also ensured the voltage is low initially, which means the LED is turned off initially. And for the IO check function, here, this is where we handle the user inputs from the push buttons. And if, for example, if we have push button 1 pressed, then this will toggle the LED on first. And it'll be the opposite because it's the not of the current state of the push button. So if it's at 0 for current state, it'll not it and do the opposite, which means it'll turn on. And then we will delay and keep that on for this many executions. So for example, if we're using 0.25 second intervals, then each 0.25 seconds would have about 244 executions of our code, which means we first turn it on, and then 244 executions later, the interrupt will be executed, and then we come back here, and then we loop again, and then it'll be executed, it'll be toggling it off, and with another 244 executions, which is about 0.25 seconds, and then continued on, so on and so forth. And here, if none of them are pressed or none of these conditions are met, then the light will default to off. And here in the main, we basically just kept the initialization outside of the while loop to ensure it's initialized, and we kept the check inside the while loop because every time we're going through the while loop, we're going to be calling this function and checking for user inputs and making sure that the LED light is being toggled on and off based on the period time interval. And yeah, that's about it for our demo, and thank you for watching.